Hello, this is Chris Pratt from Eurogamer, and I'm going to take a look at the Banner Saga free today. It's still out, I think, in the summer of this year, although we don't have a specific date just yet. And this video is pretty much, I think, the first 30 minutes of the game. Now, obviously, this was a preview version that I saw a week ago, and the final game may well change to some extent. But yeah, pretty much the first 30 minutes, at least the story beats themselves, will probably remain consistent, which is to say, if you haven't played the Banner Saga or the Banner Saga 2, you're going to run into some spoilers here. You may not want to watch the video if that's the case, because, well, a lot's happened over the last two games. This is the final part of a trilogy. And in fact, the recent news that the Banner Saga series is coming to the Nintendo Switch in full means that, like, if you haven't played it yet, don't worry, maybe pick it up for that console. I feel like it would be a pretty good fit. Now, this isn't me playing, but this was recorded whilst I was talking to one of the developers from Stoic, and I watched them play, and I basically asked a bunch of questions as we went along, and I'm going to take all the information and try and give it to you as we watch. But to begin with, we're going to press new game and watch the opening sort of cutscene to the Banner Saga free, so I'm going to shut up and let you enjoy that. Alright, so yes, Bolverk isn't dead. He's been dribbled on by a giant world-ending serpent, and that seems to have helped. Or maybe it's his connection to Balor, the immortal Sunder. Who knows? Either way, he's not dead, and he doesn't look best pleased. And speaking of not looking best pleased, this group of heroes is sort of an odd mishmash, really, isn't it? Because you've got Ivor at the front there. For the first time in the Banner Saga series, he is a POV character. You'll sort of be experiencing the story through his eyes. But the rest of the group, you've got two Menders. You've got Juno and Eyvind, and who knows what's going on with those guys. We never really know. And the rest of the group is the Ravens, who were previously led by Bolverk, who we've just sort of beaten up, and we thought we might even have killed with either. So there's some interesting tension going on right here. Here's something cool as well. Does anyone recognise this settlement that we're walking towards here? This is actually where the Banner Saga started. This is Strand, but obviously it looks a little different on account of all the darkness and weirdness that's now going on in this world. But yeah, as we said, a bit of tension going on in the group right now. The group consists, for the first time also, it's just heroes. There's no clansmen, caravan, fighters, or like normal Vol in this group. It's just heroes that we've collected along the way. And yeah, the Ravens are a bit uncomfortable with what's going on right now, but don't really have a choice, because as you can see, the only thing protecting the group from this darkness is Juno's sort of bubble of light, and so no one really has a choice but to follow her, which is usually the case with Juno, isn't it, if we're honest? And yes, as I said, because Ida is the POV character, we're making decisions on his behalf. And I wasn't playing here, I was watching one of the developers play, but I figured, well, I actually encouraged them to go with Intimidate the Ravens, because I feel like that's what Bolverk would have done, you know? That was usually his style. And Ivor, he has one arm and a big axe and a scar, and is quite frightening, so I figured that might work. I'm not going to read through the too much of the dialogue as it happens, so if you do want to keep up with that, maybe pause, read, carry on, just because there's quite a lot of information to get through as we go. But yeah, Ivor shouting at the whole group, with Eyvind doing lightning behind him. Yeah, that's how you take control of the Ravens, I think. Alright, so I think we're about to jump into our first battle, which is going to see a bunch of these heroes fight together. And obviously, which heroes you actually have in your group at this stage really does depend on some of the decisions you've made throughout your playthrough in Banner Saga and Banner Saga 2. And yeah, it's one of the things I've always really appreciated about this series is that there is a genuine feeling of consequence. Some characters will just not be in a lot of people's playthroughs. In fact, there's the example that's often brought up is Eagle, the sort of trainee of Ivor in the very first game. Only something like 4% of players got that achievement for keeping him alive throughout the entire first game, and so only 4% of players have him at this stage. But if you do have him, he's totally here, and he will totally have a role to play in the story, albeit a small one, but he will have a role to play, and I think that's cool. The Banner Saga cares about which characters you manage to keep with you so far. Anyway, we've got a fight here against a bunch of warped enemies. It looks like it's basically a combination of human and Vol. In fact, they may even be humans and Vols that belonged to you at one point, maybe from the battles that were lost just outside of Strand early on in the Banner Saga. But obviously the darkness has had something of an impact on them, and it's made them purple. What else is there to notice in this particular battlefield? There's a couple of big ones, actually. If you look down at the turn order, right at the bottom, it looks as it always has, except for the big number at the end there. It's currently on 40, it's just gone down to 39. In fact, it will go down by 1 with every single turn that passes. And when it gets to 0, a new wave of warped enemies will appear. And what this is supposed to do, according to the developers at Stoic, is combat one of the Banner Saga's biggest problems, which has always been that because of the way that the turn order works, and that you always alternate between your units and the enemy units, even if you outnumber the other group until you get to pillage mode at the end, but normally it's going to alternate between your units and their units. And that means the best thing to do in a Banner Saga battle, usually, is to weaken everyone on the opposing force and get their strength down as low as you can, because strength and HP are shared, and it means that they will have to waste turns using enemies that can't really do a lot of damage. And so, what this number is supposed to do is encourage you to not take so much time winning a battle. You need to sort of rush forwards, you need to get kills pretty quickly, otherwise you're going to be fighting more enemies than you can necessarily handle. And so that is, at least when you're in this part of the campaign, a way of combating that issue. And I do feel like the Banner Saga has done a fairly good job so far of sort of addressing the issues we've had with the games. I feel like the Banner Saga 2, for example, brought a lot more variety in terms of the enemies that you fight and the units you control, which was something that was really lacking in the first game. Yeah, so hopefully that will do the trick. Anyway, look at Ivan. Ivan is a lot greyer than he used to be. I think that might have something to do with the finale of the Banner Saga 2. But the guy's struggling a bit. Juno, however, who is now, well, I mean, she isn't struggling, but she's also, for the first time, a playable, controllable character on the battlefield. And her 2 abilities are kind of interesting. So Weaved Energy grants additional will to units, and if you can line them up correctly, you can give will to a bunch of your units in one go. But way more interesting than that is Confuse, which makes an enemy move and then attack whichever ally is closest to them, which is incredibly powerful. Confuse has been a big part of her backstory so far. In fact, she was sentenced to death by the Menders because of apparently using this ability to influence someone to do something. We still don't really quite know what happened there. We never really know what's going on with Juno. I suspect we will finally find out in this game. But look, we use Confuse on the big sort of War Master Vol there, who just causes issues. Like, he's put himself into a really awkward spot because he's a big Vol and now he's blocking those 2 units. But also using his like pretty substantial attack to hit someone else it's just a really useful ability to have. Perhaps one of the more powerful that we'll have access to. However, as with all Menders, she is pretty fragile, and in fact has immediately taken a bunch of damage there. Although that's partly intentional, because we want to see what happens when Juno does fall in combat, because it's just not as simple as it usually is with a character. What else is there to point out? You've also got the orb at the top there, which is usually there'd be the war horn there, and as you get kills you can activate it to give additional willpower, but now every charge of that orb allows you to do basically arc lightning, the ability that Ivan is the only character that can use that, I think. Yeah, out of all the Menders, that's his particular skill. But now, using this orb, we can get an additional, slightly weaker version of it to use at any point. And in fact, that was used really badly because it's just hit Ivan, who has a better version of Arc Lightning. Anyway, but with every kill, you basically get a free charge of Arc Lightning to use as you please, which is really powerful. However, this will only work with this particular group of heroes who have the orb and are in the darkness, because there is another group led by either Rook or Let, depending on your decisions in the first game, and they are at the city of Arberrang, the human capital, and we will see them before the end of this video. And yeah, basically there are two quite distinct flavors to this game that I think this runs throughout most of the storyline. You have this one group of small heroes sort of pressing forwards through the darkness, whilst your larger group, and really the final hope for civilization, this big, it's got the clansmen and the Varl and all the survivors you picked up throughout the game so far are in Arberrang, and you need to protect them, whilst this group here does whatever it can to sort of make a difference, stop whatever it is that's happening from destroying the world, is the hope. Although it's the Banner Saga, which is just usually quite a mournful, sad game, and who knows if that is even an option to save the world. Anyway, before we get into speculation, let's talk about Juno, who is now a ghost when she falls in combat, because she can't really die by the sounds of it. She becomes a ghost who can return to her body and resurrect at any time. However, will only resurrect with 1 strength, and I think a limited amount of will. I'm not entirely sure about that. Definitely with only 1 strength anyway. However, these pillars of sort of darkness that have appeared around the map, you can go and collect and gain additional strength and will, so that when you do resurrect, you come back closer to sort of full strength. However, the interesting thing about this is that the pillars are spread out all over the battlefield, which means if you wanted to collect all of them and bring Juno back with her full 9 strength, for example, it's going to take a bit of time. And not only is it taking time and delaying her return, it's also taking up a turn in your turn order. So you're pretty much wasting that turn when you could be doing damage with other units by running around and collecting them. So you have to sort of decide how much strength you're willing to wait for, at what point you can bring her back and have her start being useful again. Because the useful thing about a Mender is that really they don't need a lot of strength to be competent. They need enough to stay alive, sure, but after that, their abilities really don't come down to strength. It's all about how much willpower you have left. So maybe bringing her back with a little less strength is a better idea. Man, they are really being brazen with the use of Arc Lightning. I want to make it very clear that it wasn't me controlling this battlefield. Oh, don't do that again. You're gonna hit Volker. They're thinking about it, aren't they? Oh, okay, right, good. I wouldn't have done that, stoic developer. I know you made the game, but there we are. Thankfully, they do have a button, as you'll see shortly, which basically just kills all remaining enemies, which makes things a little easier. I was told that probably won't make it into the final build, but does make it a little bit easier when demoing builds at GDC. Okay, what else is there to point out here? Yeah, so obviously the experience and the items from the previous games will remain. So depending on what kind of state your characters were in, you might want to use a different setup to the one you're seeing here, and they will come with whatever items you've picked up along the way, and with whatever abilities and sort of preference in terms of attributes you've selected. However, I think the cap in the Banner Saga 2 was level 10, right? Yeah, so it went level 5 in the first game, level 10 in the second. Unsurprisingly, it goes up to level 15 in the Banner Saga 3. There's also a new thing called heroic titles, which we will get to look at soon enough. Oh, we've gone for confused there, have we? Which, interestingly, they didn't go for an attack that time, they just sort of walked over there. And these patches of ash on the floor, in fact, that was the button. They just did it. That was the developer pressing the button that kills all enemies, which is good. However, something else happens here, which means that you can either choose to stay on the battlefield and fight or flee, which is a mechanic that was in the first game, sort of, and if you used it, it meant that the larger battle that you were part of would go better if you stayed on and fought more, and you would lose fewer fighters and vol, which was great. However, this group doesn't have any of that to worry about. So what happens when they continue fighting? Well, first of all, you get to switch in other units that you've brought with you, which I think is really cool and will mean that you won't just have to rely on that initial sort of group of 6, which was something that I tended to do quite a lot in the previous games, is just have a really elite small group, and then the rest of my units sort of struggled a bit and were left behind in terms of levels. But yeah, if you do stay on the battlefield and continue fighting, you can bring some extra in, including the Stone Singer there, the dredge you may or may not have picked up in the Banner Saga 2, and you can also switch out, not only replace units that have fallen, but also switch out any that are on low strength. And you can then position them ahead of this next wave of enemies joining. However, it's a really difficult wave, I think more difficult than the first one we just thought, and comes with a particular unit leading them that if you can defeat, you'll gain whatever item they're carrying. And so that is the main sort of advantage here. It's less to do with saving additional troops on the battlefield and more about if you think you can carry on and defeat another second wave, you'll get a cool item. And yeah, it's that's been something that's been prevalent throughout all of the Banner Saga so far. It's about whether or not you want to take a slightly bigger risk, take slightly more injuries perhaps, but if you survive, you'll get a reward. So we've got a new character here as well called Arberrang, who we should get a look at their abilities now. Yeah, they use dark energy, and you can use that to either heal units based on how much willpower is left, or you can dash forwards using a sort of lightning ability which does strength damage based on how far you dash forwards. I don't know anything about Arberrang's backstory. I feel like this is actually, in fact I think this was clarified by the developer at the time, I believe this is a character that appears later on in the game, but they just wanted to show off at this stage so that we could see them in action. And there's also a slight bug here, in fact. I think they should be able to ride the lightning there, but there's something to do with these enemies turning up as reinforcements, which isn't allowing them to do that, which means Arberrang, this cool new unit we were just about to see in action, doesn't actually get to do their ability just yet. We've got the Stone Singer from before, and this is an incredibly powerful unit. Something they have tried to do here with the dredge units, because there are, yes, going to be more than just one. Apparently that was something that the Kickstarter backers in particular really wanted to see. The dredge units that you control will be essentially the same dredge units that you fight, and so the Stone Singers often feel very powerful, and the abilities that they've used against you, you now have access to. And we'll see another dredge later on in this video as well. It's unclear exactly what the sort of narrative reasoning there is going to be. Because, for example, if you do save the Stone Singer, I remember the Ravens really didn't like that so much, did they? And yeah, I don't know how much of that we'll run into in this third game. You'll notice those big, I meant to say it before, but those big piles of ash there. Whenever you defeat an enemy that's been warped by the darkness, they leave ash behind, which I think does damage and drains willpower. Is that right? Yeah. Stuff you don't want to step in, and interestingly, if you defeat like a Vol, for example, that has been warped by this darkness, they leave 4 tiles of the stuff, which already actually, because these have maintained from the first wave, are starting to consume quite a lot of the battlefield. Alright, back to Arberrang. Can we actually use Ride the Lightning here? Yes, there we can. That's a good amount of distance as well before hitting... God, that can go up to 9 tiles with rank 3. And I believe like you do the damage and then you immediately walk back to that position, making him quite powerful. However, as similar to the Menders, actually quite fragile, not much armor to sort of protect him. So you want to do that from a distance and try and stay out of harm's way. Once again, Juno's full in there, but another round of pillars has appeared, and we can try and go pick those up if we'd like to. And yeah, we're actually down to 1 strength and 1 willpower now, so really we do want to do that more for the willpower than anything. But yeah, look, that takes a turn in the turn order. Now there's basically a free action for the enemy forces. But we'll press the button that wins the fight anyway and move on. You'll see we did get an item there from the special Vol that was leading that force, the Wayright's Amulet. And I'm not sure that we'll find out what that does. But yeah, basically, can you beat the reinforcements? Because it's worth it. You'll get a nice trinket to take with you. Although at this stage in the game, if you played both the Banner Saga and the Banner Saga 2, you're going to have a lot of items. But I guess most of those will be low level the longer this game goes on, and you'll want to replace them with things like that, which was a level 9 item, for example. Alright, so the battle ends, and everyone's probably a little bit confused as to what's going on here. And yeah, really Juno is leading the sort of, as is often the case, she's telling you where to go and what to do, and we just sort of have to keep fighting things to make sure that happens. So yeah, it looks like there's some debate happening between Ivor and Volker here as to what should be happening. And yeah, Volker's a great character. I really like how she works on the battlefield as well. Particularly, it's a shame because I built her character all about basically standing next to Bolverk and protecting him, and I don't really know what to do with her now that he's gone. Although I guess she doesn't really know what to do now that he's gone. Although, has he gone is the question, because you see off on the horizon an imposing figure cloaked in white leading a legion of the warped. It can't be. Well, it probably can. It's Bolverk. So yeah, Bolverk is now an antagonist in the game, if not the main antagonist in this game. Bolverk / Balor, who knows exactly what's going on with him, but he is going to be chasing this group throughout the darkness, at least for the start of the game, and I think we make the decision basically to run away, because otherwise it's quite difficult. He's a big... He was strong enough before he became possessed by Balor, and now, yeah, it's probably not someone we want to mess with. I don't know how people felt about Bolverk when we lost him at the end. I guess it's something that happens throughout all the Banner Saga when you lose a character either way. But I had put so much renown into making him really strong, and it seemed like the best thing to do because he was the POV character, and those are always the ones you want to look after. And now he's chasing after us. Yes, so Luke, the darkness has basically consumed almost the entire world, except for Arberrang, where Rook is currently waiting. This is obviously only Rook in this playthrough. It might be Rook, might be Alette in yours, and I believe their part of the campaign is just going to be sort of them protecting Arberrang and trying to deal with the internal politics of that city, because outside there's just so many dredge. That's a rather intimidating number of dredge, and from first impressions, this looks like a more involved version of basically the finale of the first Banner Saga. When you were protecting a city long enough that you could take down Balor. This is, I think, protecting the city long enough that the other group can stop the darkness somehow or do something. And so, other than sort of maintaining the siege with the dredge attacking, you sort of travel around this city, which I think even requires a bit of travel time because it's so large, and try and keep the peace within it, because this is pretty much the entire hopes of civilization here. The rest of the world has been consumed. Anyone that is still alive, other than our group of heroes off in the darkness, is here in Arberrang, including the governor from Borsgard. Was that it? Yeah. Who apparently wants to have a chat. He always wants to have a chat, and he's so lame. Anyway, look who we've got here. There's two heroes that I really need to point out straight away. Ubin, or is it Ubin or Ubin? I'm not sure. The Vol, the scribe, the leader of that very first caravan in the intro to the Banner Saga, is now a playable character. That's another thing that apparently fans were requesting, as was more dredge characters. So you've got Bulwark here. We'll start with Ubin, the rank 9 Scrivener. What's his ability? So he's got Tempest, which is the sort of classic two-handed Vol approach. Although his weapon looks different than others. Is that a golden axe? Interesting. And yeah, we've got Stronger Together. This is a passive ability. When standing next to an ally, you get both get additional strength damage, and Reveal Weakness allows you to target an enemy unit and weaken them for other units to take advantage of. You've also got Bulwark, which is a dredge stone guard, which is essentially, it works the same as the stone guards that we've fought so far, which includes Kindle, which is that ability where they slam down, push people back, and they lose armor for every tile that they move. Incredibly powerful ability, and also look how much armor this character has. If anything, I feel like Bulwark here is probably going to be a little overpowered. I don't know how the other Vol characters even can stand up to that. 21 armor, 17 strength, that is huge. Also don't know the backstory to how he joins this group, or whether or not he always will. Maybe it's a choice. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, they've included him in this demo just so that we can get a look at how he works. And yeah, once again, which character is going to be live will depend on the decisions you've made so far. So you can see that he's currently at rank 10, which is the highest rank in the Banner Saga 2, but now can be promoted to rank 11. And we've got 1,000 renown to spend, which is useful. I don't think you'll ever see that. And you can see once you promote to rank 11, you also get to choose a heroic title, which there are a number of, and I believe you can pick any of them for any character. However, once you've picked a heroic title, that's then taken out of the pool. You can't have two characters with the same title. It would just be a bit embarrassing, really, wouldn't it? And yeah, I'm not entirely sure what happens at rank 15, but yeah, that is the first big thing that happens once you make that jump from 10 to 11. And yes, there we are. That should allow us to pick a heroic title, and I didn't really get a proper look at the whole list here. Some of them sound more furious than others. Bloodletter gives additional strength, additional movement, quite a lot there as well. There's really this, at this point, you're really deciding sort of what kind of character build you're going to stick with. So for the Stone Guard, for example, maybe you want to lean more into the fact that they're just incredibly hard to actually damage and have so much armor. But I decided it would be funnier to go for the Hopeful, because I feel like everyone expects Bulwark, the Dredge Stone Guard, to have an intimidating heroic title, and I thought it would just be funnier if he was known as Bulwark the Hopeful. You don't really think of the Dredge as being particularly hopeful, but there we are. And that gives a rank 3 gives +2 damage, +1 armor for adjacent allies. So yeah, you want people standing next to him. I guess that would be sort of useful, almost definitely not the most appropriate heroic title for us to take there, but it's just slightly amusing. So yeah, now that the Hopeful's been selected for Bulwark, anyone else that wanted that can't have it. And so worth thinking about that, especially because those two groups that we have, the one out in the darkness and the one at Arberrang, probably not going to be encountering each other for most of this campaign, and so it's worth sort of picking the heroic titles that make sense, not just for that character but for that group that you're running as well. They'll probably, like in combat, work quite differently. For example, if you've got Rook here who has the Mark Prey ability, you often build your entire group of units around that ability. You want maybe some extra range units, which you wouldn't necessarily need in the other group that we've got. And yeah, worth thinking about. There's the Horseborn. Didn't really use those a great deal in my playthrough of the Banner Saga, mostly because by the time I got to the bit where you encounter the Horseborn and can recruit them, I'd already got a squad that I really liked working with. They didn't seem to quite fit into it. And yeah, you can see up the top there, once again, we have Clansmen and Fighters and Vol to think about. And yeah, I'll let you listen to this. that is another one of the Sunder. I don't know the name of that character, but as you can see, it's got a cool looking hook ranged ability, which will no doubt be really troublesome to deal with. And that was the end of the demo that was shown at GDC. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you took something away from that. I know I went into a lot of sort of specific character details there, but I imagine if you're watching this video, you have already played the other 2 games and already care a lot about the series, so I figured I'd try and give as much of that as I possibly could. And yeah, if you have any more questions about the demo that I saw or about my conversation with the developers, do let me know in the comments, and I will try and address any major ones that I can. And until next time, that was the Banner Saga 3. It's out in the summer. I really, really like this series. It has its problems, I know, but it's just gorgeous and it sounds wonderful. And I think it has a really nice approach to storytelling. So yeah, hopefully you do too. And I'll leave you on that. Goodbye.